Well, the end of the marathon.
I think it's an ultra marathon.
It's an ultra. We're almost at the finish line. It seems like a decade ago that we sat here on that first panel 3 days ago, but it's been wonderful and so many common themes. And yet again, following on from what we spoke about yesterday, purpose at the center of that presentation with Fiona.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and about wellness as well. So really appreciate that study and that work that's been able to go into that.
Yeah, wonderful, Mike. So kind of as we come to the end, talking about operational challenges and again, want to address some solutions and your great idea. This was going to be your session and delighted and honored that you've invited me to join you here because the great idea you came up with is rather than making this all about Chicago event management and the Chicago Marathon, let's make it a little bit more global and address some of the issues that I'm hearing wearing my MPW hat that are kind of pretty universal around the world, but maybe putting your lens over how we might be able to solve those and provide some support. And obviously we want to finish with some ideas and recommendations for everyone.
No, absolutely, and I really appreciate you coming up and helping support me. And again, I thought it would be a lot better having Chris here, the resident expert. He's done so much work, especially during the COVID period, keeping us connected globally. And again, I think I'd really have a myopic approach in terms of the challenges we face. But again, I think there's many of the same challenges that we're all facing. However, I didn't want to be specific to our event, our city, United States, and not really be able to have that perspective that Chris can obviously bring to this conversation, but also being able to tie in so many of the great conversations, discussions, and I believe a lot of the shared solutions that I know that each one of us will be bringing back to our organizations and events going forward. So, I think there's a number of them that we're facing that we're all probably similar challenges that we're going to face from an operational perspective. And I wrote some of these down so I just didn't forget. I think from a participant registration demand, I think a lot of that's going to be a challenge for all of us. Many of us have been able to come back successfully. For many of you that are aware in terms of Chicago this year, we're really delighted in terms of where we are to date in terms of our success. The total number of finishers, we're just under 40,000 participants that did finish this year's race. And again, it was intentional for us to reduce the number in our field size this year so we can manage to that. Last year was really, really challenging for all of us. I know that, and us particular, bringing back the Chicago Marathon in 2021, reduced field size of 27,000 participants. But, really, we are fortunate to have that type of field size to be able to manage, just to be able to come back, bust the rust off, to be able to have a solid production rolling into this year and really working with our team and really a lot of new faces on our staff as well as the event staff and the volunteers and a lot of the city partners and agencies we worked with. So really looking forward to next year. I know that Jackie with Haku is familiar and has information and access to our data, but we launched registration in a week after our marathon, which again gave us a little bit of time and didn't just go and sell the race again, and did celebrate the successes of many of our runners. We have a full field, demand is really, really high, and I can tell you, and I won't give an exact number right now because it's still going, but we're exceeding 2019 numbers. So we're doing really well, and it's a great testament in terms of where we are, where our sport is going, and it really feels positive. The other part that I'm really excited about is right now, if we choose to select a lot of the first-time runners, we have 51% in our current drawing, maybe not first-time marathon runners, but first-time Chicago Marathon runners, if we chose to select them. That is a lot. That would be half the drawing pool, not saying the entire field, half the drawing pool that we can pull from. So it's
how does that compare to what that would have been like in previous years, Mike?
I think, well, it might be similar. I didn't take a look at that data specifically, so I can't honestly say. But to me, it's like, it's a very big number. Yep. So if you can imagine in all the discussions about how do we work with our government, how do we work with our city, Do you think they would be excited about that? 54% new to Chicago Marathon, probably haven't been to Chicago too many times. And if they have, I think we can really supply and create an incredible experience and make that connection with our event as well as with our city. So again, we have a lot of great things to be excited about going into next year. And I just want to tee things up as well. As much of the operational challenges that we know that we're going to face, all the things that we went through COVID, I really feel that there's an opportunity. And I know it was stated earlier in an earlier session, where it was said, and I can't remember who mentioned it. It was like, I'm glad we went through COVID, or COVID happened. And in a certain sense, yeah, it was devastating in so many ways. But in terms of how much stronger we've become as we're going through COVID and as we're coming out the other end, it's incredible in terms of what we've been able to endure, what we've learned, and how we've been able to innovate. I think many of us during that time have been able to really learn new things, whether it's virtual races. I think for all of us, and I can testify, it's a testament on my part as well, is we've become a fulfillment house as well. Shipping and everything else, which was really, really challenging. And shipping globally, we learned a lot through that. Do we think we're going to learn that going forward? Absolutely. Is it going to make us better and be able to fulfill and provide better customer service? Absolutely. So we're really excited to apply a lot of those learnings that's only going to enable us to deliver a much better and stronger experience overall to our participants. So that's from the general participation. The other part that I was really excited to hear, and you heard it every single day, is about personalization. And I truly feel that's going to be a game changer, is how do we continue to help recruit new participants? How do we engage better with the participants that we do have, breaking them down in the segments and truly communicating to them based on what their experience and expectation will be based on how they'll participate in our event. The one thing I wish we did spend and talk a little bit more on, that I know that we're going to spend a lot more time on our side for our race starting this year and going forward, is what can we do and how much more can we do and work with the volunteers. Again, for Chicago, going forward, we have 10,000 volunteers. That's a huge number of participants and people that are part of our event. And we want to continue to recruit. We need to retain them and have them engage. And I think there's an opportunity to convert them, and there's a conversion as well. So hopefully they will run. But if not, we still want them to be part of, and they are a fabric of, our event and our community as well. So I think there's a lot that we can, hopefully pick up at the next conference and talk more about the volunteerism. I know we did talk volunteers, but data segmentation, more that we can do with our volunteer field. So I'll pause there, and that's kind of the key things that we're focused on from a workforce participant base, the challenges that we know that we're going to face, but more importantly, the opportunities.
Yeah, great opportunities, and you're right. I mean, how many people, we've spoken about it a few times, volunteers as labor that you reach out to a couple of months beforehand, but missing so many opportunities to engage with them, to bring them to sponsors and so on. Let's switch a little bit into some of the other operational things. So you touched on becoming a fulfillment house. Procurement, suppliers, supply chain, it's one of the things I'm hearing all over the world. And from a time perspective, I think one of the big things which is really hurting many people is suppliers demanding big deposits up front, with an industry that typically struggles, particularly with this late kind of registration trend that many of the smaller events are happening, the challenges around that. And one that I think might be a blind spot for parts of the industry is my worry with the recession is not going to just hit our events, but it's going to hit the supply chain. And so you're an event that's paid a 50, an 80% deposit up front, which typically would have been 30 or 50%. One of your suppliers goes out of business, your deposit's gone. The message I keep giving to people is be very, very wary of who you're paying deposits for and make sure that they're going to be able to deliver that service. But managing that from a cash flow and an operational perspective, any tips that you've got for people in the audience? And again, you sit at the kind of pointy end of the pyramid, but it's challenging all the way down and all around the world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when they're already requesting your orders far in advance, whether it's for the metals, whether it's for our merchandise, it becomes challenging, especially for a lot of events that you don't know what your field size is going to look like. You don't know what who the participants are or their sizes, becomes really challenging. Then you're starting to inflate the number of orders that you need in advance that could go to waste. And then there you have a lot of waste and sustainability issues. So we've had to basically make a lot of our advanced orders early. And some of the things that we have been trying to do and do more of is procure our items and supplies and goods locally. So again, a lot of our metals, and I'll share that with you, come from China. We did have a massive issue this year, last year, where a couple of the team members on the ship had COVID, so the ship didn't sail, and then they had to air freight our metals. Now, if you can imagine what that cost would be, and then how much fuel was needed, was a tremendous amount or expense. So our orders are starting earlier. Will there be some spoilage and waste? Yeah, unfortunately, yes. But so there's a lot of other things that we're looking to purchase and order locally so we can shorten the time frame for sustainability, as well as getting closer to exactly what we need when it comes to merchandise orders and supply needs as well.
Yeah, it's great insights there, Mike. Going back a little bit to resourcing, we spoke about staff, spoke about volunteers, but key stakeholders. I'm hearing, particularly out of the US, but also other parts of the world, not enough police to be able to do road closures. I think I'm right in saying Houston or one of those events didn't get their marathon approved. Nothing to do with their plans, but there just weren't enough police to be able to do it. I'm hearing in many other parts of the world, Australia, parts of Europe, tripling of costs of police and traffic management. Is there an opportunity here for the industry to come together and say, can we create pools of accredited traffic management people? Again, coming back to this collaboration model. Any thoughts? I know we've spoken on calls where you've literally been flying in people, from other parts of the US and Canada to come and support your events. But what are some of the opportunities around that for collaboration and reduction of costs and ensuring that the events go ahead?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's having that great relationship with the city. And again, it's not their fault that they've lost staff, but it has had a significant impact to our budget. Not saying bottom line necessarily, but we've had to provide additional volunteers and staffing. And with their traffic management authority that support the police, they only had a third of the staff, and a third of the staff even this year. So we really had to dig deep and then recruit volunteers, bring people in, bring a lot of our industry partners in that stepped up, came into town from everywhere in the United States and even abroad to really help us all help us fill these gaps to become the solution. But I do agree in terms of, can we pull together, work together to find solutions? And I think we proved that this year. Is it sustainable? No. Economically, I reimburse travel, hotels, and everything else. It's not sustainable in the long run, but hopefully our city partners are going to be able to get back up to speed. But we are going to have to work on volunteers and course marshaling and increase and bolster that. Just knowing that I don't think it's going to be 100% by 2023, but then starting those conversations well in advance, having that trust and just making sure that, hey, it's okay, we just need to know so then we can be better prepared, because we just don't want to be in a situation where you have a vehicle incursion that you've been hearing at some of the several races taking place in the United States. So again, I'd rather be safe than sorry, but start that conversation and really identify where some of those gaps are so then we can come up with a solution. And again, in addition to just staffing, but barriers and equipment for road closures were limited as well. They didn't have the staff to get the equipment out there, so we had to supply and bring private contractors in to be able to help block those streets off as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm hearing that from suppliers. There used to be the opportunity to get 3 quotes for porta potties or portaloos, depending where you are in the world. One company in town, amalgamated, price issue, no competitive, and often the stock's not available because it's been redeployed. You spoke about vehicle intrusion. Let's talk a little bit about emergency preparedness. My sense is that maybe many of us have been distracted, in inverted commas, so focused on COVID-safe events that the traditional emergency and safety planning and preparedness has not been overlooked, but is maybe not evolved as much as it needs to. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, again, our events and, even for us, we have a limited size staff to produce the size field that we have. And we only have so many people that can spend time and focus on the emergency planning, preparedness. Yes, did we do that? Absolutely. But we did have some gaps when it came to the training, the exercises, workshops, something we just didn't have the time or bandwidth to do. And truly, when you're walking into the event, knowing you're going to have 40 some odd thousand people start your race, you do feel vulnerable. It's like you wish you had that time and the resources to conduct the training and to do an exercise properly. And you just didn't really feel, or at least I didn't feel as prepared as I wanted to be. But it was, trying to fill and recruit and fill as many of those gaps from volunteers, event staffs, contractors that a lot of us spent that time to do. And again, did we pay attention, do the proper documentation, everything? Absolutely. But you just felt as something catastrophic happened, I didn't feel as prepared as I wanted to be. So I can tell you this year, going into next year, that is going to be the number one priority, is to really focus on the preparedness standpoint, the training aspects, those workshops, the tabletop exercises and drills.
Yeah. Right point. Thanks, Mike. And I guess one that now comes into that category, which we touched on when we were talking earlier, is the whole issue of climate change now. Sam Middlehurst was here yesterday, and for the last couple of days, many of you know him. I got a message from him. He flew back to Kuala Lumpur. He's got the music run this weekend. Torrential rain, flooding overnight in Kuala Lumpur. Hopefully by the time his event happened, that's abated. But you're increasingly seeing it, fires, heat. How are you at Chicago Event Management preparing for that, being aware of it? What's the kind of long-range things that you need to be looking out for? I'm guessing it's the on-the-ground planning, it's better education of the participants, there's a whole bunch of elements to it that is going to inevitably start impacting our events more and more, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, that's all part of the emergency planning preparedness. Of course, we have an all-hazards approach to it, and you're always planning for the big bang. You hate to say that, but it's true. But we also really focus on the things that we know that will impact us, has impacted us, and it's not a matter of if, it's when. For lightning, weather, heat, and high winds in Chicago. So again, those are the four things that we know that we need to exercise, and we always want to make sure we have a solid plan around. And we really focus on the diversion plans. What happens if we have to evacuate? Having really solid evacuation plans of our site in Grant Park, the start and finish. But one thing I missed, again, when I said I didn't have the resources, we didn't actually do the walkthroughs of like evacuating this facility, where do you go? It looked good on a map, but a lot of people, you probably wouldn't have really been as prepared to actually say, this is the route out, here's your equipment. There's nothing like being able to see everything in hand and walk through it versus see it on paper. So those are the things that we're really focused on. The other part, and a lot of things that I just stated is weather related. So we've been spending a lot of time and spent time this year focused on weather related and providing the proper resources and collaborating with Western Kentucky University, a university that is really specializing in both emergency planning, preparedness, and weather tracking and forecasting. And I know that Christine Bowen's going to bring all of us out, and we're going to do a special panel at Running USA, and then did a case study and going to showcase in terms of how we collaborated together. And they have a whole course on disaster sciences, and then really helping us take a lot more of that information in terms of the forecasting. And we married a lot of our past medical data along with that. So on a hot year, what are some of the things that we did? What are some of those treatments that took place during race day along the course, and being able to better prepare and plan days out? So if we're starting to see certain temperatures that we've faced in the past, we also have our medical records based on what diagnosis had taken place at these different points on the course and the treatment, so then we could be better prepared. So again, this year we increased the number of weather stations on course, Whipple globe thermometers, and did it every 15-minute readings. And so we also wanted an exhibit, and our temperatures change on our course, as you know. And so we're tracking microclimate and collecting microclimate data, and being able to now take that information, marrying it against the medical data that we have at those points as well. And I think in the future, we're going to hopefully be able to take that information, push it through our participant application, and so all of a sudden, as we are hearing, how can you help change behavior? So it's not about you, that you're not strong enough to get through bad conditions, especially if it's heat. It's about the condition that's causing you to slow down. So slow down. And so we did recognize that. I just want to share that as everyone's aware. We shut our race down in 2007 due to excessive heat, probably the first major marathon of its size to do so, and it was the right call to make. And we went through the whole exercise, took our operation, and just rebuilt everything. And as you can imagine, no one likes change. And so everyone's like, well, why are we doing this? This is a lot of work. This is never going to happen again. This was an anomaly. Well, guess what happened in 2008? Exact same temperature, exact same humidity, but we didn't have to cancel the event because we built in a lot of different communication tools. And the communication tool that we had is the event alert system. We had it in 2007, but we had very poor communication and education. What changed was we over-communicated to event staff, participants, and spectators, and everywhere you looked, and communicated what level that they were going to experience. And then we did a survey after 2008. Were you aware of it? 88% of people were aware of the event alert system. And then the second question, did it change your behavior? 70% said it did. So right there, it told you they slowed down. They saw the flags go red on course. They slowed down, they walked, they took their time, they didn't push through it. So again, we learned a lot, and same thing that we're talking about through COVID. These are so many things that we learned that we're going to continue to apply in our events going forward.
Thanks, Mike. And I think, again, it's probably World Athletics is getting involved there as well. There's more accreditation of race directors with the medical plan with Dr. Paolo. It's this ability for us as an industry. Not all of the events have the resources that you have, but this ability to be able to share this knowledge across the industry and pass it on. Time flies as always. Let's get to the positive stuff at the end. We heard Dorna say we've got to be willing to make a change. There's going to be some pain, but there's some excitement coming. Talk about the exciting things in the next few minutes that we've got left, please.
Well, as we already shared and Donna shared earlier, is the Abbott World Marathon Majors Age Group Championships. So we're going to be hosting that next year in Chicago. It's going to be our 45th anniversary, so another big opportunity for us to celebrate with all of our participants and volunteers, staff, and spectators. The other one that we're really excited, and it just talks about the popularity of our sport, is we're going to be celebrating our 1 millionth finisher. So we don't know who that's going to be. Obviously, it's going to be around 13,000 or 15,000 in terms of the finisher. That would be the 1 millionth. Will we identify the 1 millionth person? Potentially, but our campaign, and we haven't confirmed it, but it's going to be like if all of you were taking part, you're going to be 1 in a million to finish and be part of that. You're all going to be able to celebrate with us. So those are some of the big things that we're really excited about next year, as well as a full field with so many of our activities, activations, hospitality programs coming back online.
Fantastic. We've spoken about workforce and from an opportunity perspective, something you're passionate about, more of a diverse participant from an age perspective, from a gender perspective, and people with disabilities and so on. Talk to that for a minute or two, and then I'd like to finish on sustainability, which I know is so important to you and the industry and a passion of yours as well.
Absolutely, and that's something that we've been working on from a DEI perspective, and really starting with our own organization, taking a look at us and all of us in our office and making sure that we're a true reflection of the communities in which we serve. I think we obviously need to do a much better job in our participant field, working on that, and especially as it's been communicated, I communicated earlier, you're really seeing that in that new Chicago 13.1. But overall, our workforce that's involved in the event, as well as volunteers, reaching out to new communities, new groups, getting them involved, people with all abilities and disabilities as well. really focusing on accessibility. And we talk about it from a standpoint from our participants, our athletes with disabilities programs and wheelchair athletes, et cetera. And of course, they're going to have access and accommodations. But we haven't paid in particular, focus in terms of our facilities, our venues for all people when it comes to workforce and volunteers as well as spectators. And we're going to be focusing on that all next year, for next year. So they have access to facilities in Grant Park, the tents, areas in which they're going to be working. So it gives us the ability to continue to recruit everyone that's part of our community so they can get involved and not be impeded by obstacles, et cetera, so everyone feels included and really doing that work.
Wonderful, and clearly lots of operational elements to make that happen, but with long-term planning, it can all happen successfully. Mike, the clock's ticked down. Wonderful, as always, to catch up, and we'll hand it back to Irene and get it to wrap up the day.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.